Marketplace is supported by Putnam Investments, where performance is driven by original fundamental research on a global scale. This is Putnam Today. Produced in association with the University of Southern California.
With health care and financial reform successfully behind them, Senate Democrats went for the legislative trifecta today. They introduced their long-awaited energy bill this morning, but the truth is, the package is a well-scaled-down version of what they originally had in mind. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Gather.com, the social network where people can make new friends who share their interests. People talking about today's news at news.gather.com. And by Progressive Insurance, helping people shop for car insurance at 1-800-PROGRESSIVE and Progressive.com.
From the Frank Stanton Studios in Los Angeles, I'm Kai Ryssdal. Good to have you here on this Wednesday. It is the 28th of July today. The Senate's energy bill was originally supposed to be a climate change bill with a cap-and-trade clause in it. That's limits on carbon pollution and renewable energy targets for utility companies. But today, Majority Leader Harry Reid said there just aren't the votes for that. There are, though, votes for some energy efficiency measures. The bill beefs up government oversight of oil companies and gets rid of liability limits for oil spills, although Marketplace's John Dimsdale reports that last part is still subject to negotiation.
One thing everybody does agree on is the current $75 million liability cap is too low.
It's like applying a aspirin to somebody who's got tuberculosis.
Daniel Weiss directs climate issues at the Center for American Progress. He says the only way to make oil companies more careful is to make them responsible for all the consequences.
They'll do better training, they'll use better equipment, more redundant backup systems to make sure they don't get stuck with a $20 or $30 billion tab.
But Republicans and some Democrats from energy-producing states say unlimited liability will leave only the biggest oil companies able to afford the insurance for offshore drilling. Jack Gerard is president of the American Petroleum Institute.
It would force all the small and mid-sized companies out of the Gulf, leaving only the large firms as well as national companies that are owned by foreign governments able to operate in the Gulf.
Gerard says it would also cut domestic oil production by 27%. A small group of Democrats from coastal states is trying to find an alternative. Alaska Senator Mark Begich has an amendment to make the entire oil industry responsible.
It's a joint risk. Not only will the regulatory people from the federal government be watching over the shoulders of the industry, but now you have industry watching over each other because one person makes a mistake, everyone pays.
Begich says he will not vote for an energy bill that includes unlimited liability for individual oil companies. In Washington, I'm John Dimsdale for Marketplace.
The Commerce Department reported today that orders for durable goods were down 1% last month. That's cars and airplanes and washing machines, big, expensive stuff. And the drop does sound bad, but the numbers have a more complicated story to tell, as Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer reports.
Durable goods are products meant to last at least 3 years, and any way you slice it, the story seems to be that demand for them is losing steam, whether we're talking about computers, machinery, or electronics. Joshua Shapiro is chief U.S. economist with MFR in New York.
The underlying message, I think, is that we've seen momentum begin to slow down.
You see that in another number released today. Manufacturers' inventories, the stuff they've made and not sold yet, were up almost 1%. What happened? Factories ramped up to meet increased demand after the recession. Now things have leveled off. Manufacturers have a little extra inventory, but that's okay. In fact, they might need more. Kevin Flanagan is a Morgan Stanley economist. He puts this part of the manufacturing story in Goldilocks terms. Manufacturers have to get the porridge just right.
If you were to look at demand being steady going forward, then they would probably be too cold.
In other words, manufacturers would have to turn up the heat on production. Michelle Gerard is senior economist at Royal Bank of Scotland. She says look at 3 or 4 months of manufacturing.